Prime Minister Mark Carney was supposed to be the adult in the room, and yet a headline from the Toronto Sun reveals that we're getting more of the same. Get a load of this. Mark Carney mocked for hugging a man in a thong at Vancouver Pride Parade. Now, the picture in the Toronto Sun here, which is fortunately cut off at the waist, shows Mark Carney in a full suit hugging a man who is completely naked except for a pink thong and a halter type thing. I'm not sure what that is. I'm certain that I don't want to know. But let's take a look at how the Toronto Sun covered this. And it's worth noting that this story didn't get a lot of coverage here in Canada, because I think that even the taxpayer-funded journalists at the CBC recognize that the story is just embarrassing, because it did make the news in the United States. Fox News covered Prime Minister Mark Carney, the guy currently trying to cut a trade deal in D.C., was hugging a almost entirely naked man on the street in Vancouver. So here's the Toronto Sun piece. Prime Minister Mark Carney surprised revelers, that's one way to put it, at Vancouver's Pride Parade over the weekend. While his attendance wasn't announced, Carney was in the city to meet with Vancouver Fraser Port Authority and CEO Peter Exoda and DP World Chief Operating Officer Joel Werner in the morning for a photo op after visiting the port facility. They were apparently wearing clothes for the entirety of those meetings, proving that it's not that hard if you just try. The Prime Minister followed that up with a meeting with the BC Premier David Eby as the U.S. hit Canada with a 35% tariff on goods not compliant with the SUSMA on trade, as well as renewed animosity in the long-running softwood lumber dispute. But, and there's a lot riding on the butt here, he wrapped his visit on the parade route marching for about a kilometer. While Carney kept his outfit business casual, navy suit, blue dress shirt, and burgundy sneakers, he did have an orange-pink lesbian flag. I didn't even know the lesbians had their own flag, tucked into his pocket like a makeshift pocket square that served as a symbolic sign of support for the LGBT community. But his support didn't stop there. That's my addition, by the way, to the article. Carney was greeted by loud cheers from parade goers lining the sidewalks along the route as he shook hands with the crowd and posed for photos with participants. But it was one photo of the PM hugging a nearly naked man who had nothing but a pink thong separating him from Canada's normally buttoned-up leader that caught people's attention. And there's a picture which we'll put up on the screen cut off. There's a guy you can see right behind Mark Carney with just an absolutely devastated expression. And that man is like all of Canada right now. And so there's a whole bunch of, they recorded a whole bunch of pretty crude and really angry internet comments, which I'm going to skip over here. But what I do want to highlight here are the PM's comments at Pride. So at one point, the PM was handed a microphone by a drag queen who thanked him for coming, to which Carney replied by saying the parade was, quote, the best of Canada. That it represents Canada in a, quote, very positive way and, quote, represents the essence of Canada. So it's the guys walking in the street in front of families with kids in a pink thong. They're the best of Canada. Not Saskatchewan farmers or Alberta oil rig workers or fishermen in the Maritimes or the military. No, the very best of Canada is this dude in a pink thong walking on the street in front of families, which, by the way, you can see in the photograph. There's the Prime Minister, there's families in the background, and then there's a dude in a halter of some kind in a pink thong hugging the Prime Minister. The only reason I'm kind of surprised is because I just thought Mark Carney had more dignity than that. We all knew Justin Trudeau didn't. He spent his very first year in office, he went to Vancouver Pride, said every prime minister should attend Pride, and then he kind of like scampered around in a pink shirt with his tongue hanging out like a golden retriever for an hour and a half and got photographed by every major media platform in the country. But Mark Carney, you know, he's written like long books that Trudeau probably never read. He was the governor of the Bank of Canada and the Bank of England. And he just strikes me as the sort of person who supported the LGBT movement more from afar when it comes to these more, shall we say, indecorous public performances. And so it is really jarring to see Mark Carney hugging this dude in a pink thong. You do wonder what's going through his head, right? Like, I suspect most of you have never had a situation where you have a man coming at you in a pink thong and your instinct is, well, I guess I've got to hug him now because the cameras are there. In fact, most people would have the precise opposite reaction. And this picture is just kind of an unfortunate, grim snapshot of where Canada's at. Because any previous prime minister, even 15 years ago, wouldn't have been caught dead, hugging a guy naked except for a thong on the street. Even the sort of, sticking his butt out, keeping the guy as far away from him as possible, back tub hug that Mark Carney is clearly trying to accomplish here. You just wouldn't do it because it would be seen as really negative, really gross, really undignified, not befitting the office to be doing this sort of thing. But the LGBT movement has so much control over Canada's establishment and especially the progressive wing that you now basically have to do this. If you're on the street, this is what you've got to do. And it just strikes me as so ironic that all of this agenda started to be legalized in 1969 with Pierre Trudeau's omnibus bill, which decriminalized abortion and normalized and sort of loosened the restrictions on divorce. And there was a laundry list of other pelvic issues included in this legislation. And the quote that was used to defend this was, "The state has no business in the bedrooms of the nation." Now, wouldn't that be a refreshing thing to adopt once again for the Liberal Party? Because now we have completely the opposite perspective. Is the state not only has a great business in what goes on in the bedrooms of the nation, but we have to pay for what goes on in the nation. We have to fund birth control. We have to fund condoms. The state actually has to show up at these parades and applaud about all the things that are going on. The prime minister in his full suit has to be hugging almost naked men wearing pink thongs because it's really important for him to show support for almost naked men in pink thongs in order that his support for whatever that guy gets up into the bedroom is recorded for the cameras as a requirement of residents in 24 Sussex. And so all of this, the state has no business in the bedrooms of the nation. Spare me, because I'm looking at a photograph of Canada's prime minister with an almost naked dude on top of him in the street. And that's where we ended up. And I don't think that's where anybody thought we would end up. Looking at Mark Carney's face here, I'm not even sure he thought this is where he ended up. But here we are. Thanks so much for joining us on The Bridgehead today. If any of you have any stories that we should cover, please drop a comment below. If you have any vigorous disagreement or heckling you'd like to do, please drop those comments as well. You can find our content wherever you download your podcast. And if you found this content helpful, please do share the video or like it. Thanks so much for listening.